All right, so I got my bags packed, getting ready to leave. It is about 8 right now. My flight is at 10:30, and I still can't believe that I'm gonna be doing this. So I'm at the city center in Adjuntas, and one interesting thing to see is that the entire township has kind of been redeveloped, which is great. What this has allowed is for more sustainability without necessarily having to rely on the grid. And I think this is a really important thing to note, because when we think about education in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria on the island, what we find is that when there is energy independence, things operate a lot more smoother, especially at the municipal level. Just to put this into perspective, we're about 2 hours away from San Juan and about an hour and 20 minutes away from Ponce, which is the second largest municipality in the island. So I'm here in front of Casa Pueblo, which is in the municipality Adjuntas. And what's interesting about this building over here is that they re-established a community center.
So after the hurricane, we were running with solar power because we are energy independent. We're producing the energy at the point of consumption. We have been running with solar power since 1999, and we have upgraded through the years. And by 2017, we were producing more energy than what we're using. And Casa Pueblo became an energy oasis and so on, and we started helping the community in new terms, let's say. Energy was sort of like the priority. The streets, we have been defending the land from mining, natural gas pipelines, and unsustainable proposals, but we have been proposing alternatives like Bosque del Pueblo, Bosque La Olimpia, Bosque Escuela. All of these projects are using our community knowledge and energy to do constructive projects. We don't want to be opposing all the time. We want to be
part of it. Yeah, to
building
improve.
up what we think ought to be.
So a lot of the buildings that are around here, you can see the church behind me. You have some government facilities, some small businesses, a bank, city hall that's just down the plaza here. All of it is being sustained with solar energy.
Especially to break the model of dependency. Puerto Rico is a U.S. colony, and we need to break those different dependencies that keep Puerto Rico into a difficult situation to meet,
Self-determination.
Self-determination.
Yeah.
So in order to reach self-determination, you need to be in a better position,
yes.
Not under
a
high degree of dependency, because if not, you cannot self-govern.
So one thing that we failed to mention when it comes to Hurricane Maria and the effects that it had on the island, and also in terms of schooling and infrastructure, is coastal erosion. So as you can see over here behind me, the beach used to stretch all the way out past that reef there, right? And now it's covered in water. And what this does in the long run is that all of the housing that you have that's built along the coast. So if you see these hotels that are back here, eventually the sea level is going to go right to the shore or right to the front steps of those facilities. And it'll cause way more damage that were built right along the coastlines. And as a result of global warming and climate change, it's no longer viable to have them there.
So building energy independence, protecting the land, all of our educational projects, the culture is a way for us to work on self-decolonization. In a process that instead of waiting for a political solution, we are building a solution from the bottom up.
Right.
And we don't have the political power, we don't have the economical power, but we have community power to exercise some level of self-determination at this scale. Because if we're going to be a republic or an independent country to
You have to sustain yourself.
To have the same dependency working on fossil fuels. Do we want a republic for that, or do we want a state to be a state of the U.S. to be the same? Using fossil fuels. It's not an alternative future. That's pretty much the same. So self-determination needs to break the model of dependency. And after that march, we proposed in 2019 on Earth Day, Adjuntas Pueblos Solares. So it is to go after the place with the highest energy demand. Most jobs are created. To build a microgrid to power downtown, the business groups like the pharmacy, the pizza place, the bakery, 2 warehouses, the hardware store, and so on. And these are the places that said yes. And this is April 2019. At that point, we started to organize the community, the government structure, the business owners. They have to get organized, all the legal framework. We had to work on the design, getting the part financing, and so on. So that's from 2019 to 2020. Then we had the earthquake sequence and the COVID. So we started with the installation late 2020. But out of 6 installers, we have 3 women. So confronting gender inequality is kind of important. And there's a collateral stories about the participation of women in the installation. So we have installed for this specific project, like 800 solar panels. It's a 200 kilowatt solar system for those main places. And on Earth Day 2021, we turned the breaker, the transfer switch. We switched from PREPA to have solar power as net metering. So during the day, they're producing energy for themselves, and the excess power is sent out to the grid. No batteries at this point.
No batteries.
At this point.
Okay.
So this is April 2020. At that point, it's going to be a real microgrid, and it will build resilience for downtown and
just to kind of
that's where we are right now with this specific one.
But like kind of to understand the scale of this, what's the population size of this municipality?
17,000 people.
17,000 people.
And there's a lot of poverty in Adjuntas, and unemployment rate could be more than 40%.
Really?
I mean, this is a isolated, remote, with a lot of social, economical injustices.
Yeah.
What is the growth like in Adjuntas right now? I mean, I see that a lot of people are actually moving out from Puerto Rico versus moving in, and that's obviously because the fact is that
Adjuntas is coming down the population.
It is coming, because I see that a lot of parts of Puerto Rico, they can't really sustain themselves, even work.
Well, that's a different discussion, but it's based on colonialism as well. It's related to that. It's like if you're shutting down the schools, if you're cutting up the 50% the University of Puerto Rico budget, if you don't have security, if you don't have health system, people are basically expelled from power, insecurity. I mean, Puerto Rico, and I think there's some intention in this, being modeled in a way that local people are basically pushed out.
So one interesting thing about Casa Pueblo is that it's not only a museum, but it's also a community center. And one thing that they've gotten right is that they have begun to become climate resilient. The entire facility is powered completely by solar energy.
But the other thing we have done is we have done like basic installations for over 100 homes. And the idea is also to deal with poverty and health issues. 6 solar panels is enough to produce the basic energy for the critical loads of a house, like the fridge, lighting, communication. And as people are producing their energy, and these are low-income
Giving back.
families that we have been doing this, they're saving money. This is what we think the way to actually build energy democracy. People participating in energy production. We have done critical infrastructure like the fire station, the emergency unit, the transmission tower of Radio Casa Pueblo. Radio Casa Pueblo is also working with solar.
A través de Radio Casa Pueblo 1020 AM somos Radio Casa Pueblo desde Adjuntas, Puerto Rico, Pueblo Solar. Vamos a la pausa, regreso con más de lo bueno en breve en tu radio.
Elderly home. We have done 5 grocery stores in rural areas, which is the first line of defense for food security. Is where people get food first. It's small places. This is how Adjuntas looks from above.
Wow.
And this is getting. I have to update this because it's changing quickly. I think what we have seen is 1 installation a day in Adjuntas. And what you see in pink are projects that have been sponsored by Casa Pueblo, have been promoted by Casa Pueblo. But this one that has like a yellow and pink these are installations that we gave them the solar panels as a seed to help them do the investment. So many are sort of hybrids. Most of our installations are actually were done in rural areas, so you don't see them here. But there's a lot of independent ones, the yellow circles. There's a new company in Adjuntas, Sol de la Montaña. They have a workforce of 6 people, local people that were trained, and now you're generating like a collateral impact of creating jobs and other business opportunities for the community. Actually, the energy agenda is creating economic activity within the community, and this is what we call local development, sustainable. It's not perfect. There's some contradictions still, especially with the energy storage component, but it's moving towards a more fair, more democratic participation. Adjuntas right now is in a better position to confront climate changes. We're not safe. We're not fine. I mean, we have a lot of challenges ahead, but we are not like before Hurricane Maria. And before Hurricane Maria, Casa Pueblo was, let's say, basically fine, but now we think that Adjuntas is in a better position.
So one thing that people don't realize about Puerto Rico is that the inside of the island, the center part of the island, is extremely mountainous. And so you could imagine that during Hurricane Maria, it was virtually impossible for FEMA to reach these locations in time.
We actually promoted El Bosque Solaris. Have you seen it?
Not yet.
So this is
It's beautiful. I have actually seen it now.
so this is before. We have built like art sculptures that simulates trees. They're built from electrical poles, tilted.
So that they can get the energy from the sun.
No, tilted like it symbolizes the electrical grid in Puerto Rico. That is
Tilted.
tilted.
Yes.
And the branches are solar panels, which is the future, and sort of taking over the electrical grid. This is now like a plaza, an energy oasis. something happens, people can come here and plug in their equipment. So it's a functional sculpture.
Self-sufficient.
We're producing power for this building, and we have sent like not an electrical cord, but an electrical installation to this house and to additional houses for emergency. If something happens, they can plug in their fridge, food security. The forest produces food.
Yes.
So this is energy from the solar forest producing power for food security, let's say. Or like it happened before with the recent power outage, this house, the people with medical conditions, that they were able to
plug in
have at
machines.
least those equipments up and running.
Now, part of the reason why it was so effective was because a lot of the townships that were around here ran out of power. And so what ended up happening was that Casa Pueblo kind of became a central hub to charge phones, to provide electricity, to help elderly people that were in need. Some of them needed to run ventilators. And so they established a kind of a center in the middle of the facility to house people, to sustain them.
Puerto Rico. Sabemos que en algunas partes de Puerto Rico, sabemos que durante el huracán hay lugares que todavía no se ha tocado. Por la montaña, nosotros fuimos por Seattle, por allá, estamos pasando por aquí, vemos que el crecimiento, el amor a su pueblo, la gente le tiene el amor a su pueblo, que quiere lo que es reconstruir.
Nosotros aquí causó mucho, solamente María. Primero fue otro disturbio que se acercaron antes de María, ya estaban haciendo su daño, ¿no?
Sí.
Pero nosotros hemos tenido ayuda del gobierno americano, de FEMA, en algunos lugares. Todavía en algunos municipios, algunos pueblos están todavía esperando esa ayuda. Y todavía hay personas que están viviendo enfermadamente, o sea, con techos de...
Ni decir.
No,
Nada.
son condiciones bien malas en cuanto a la vivienda. Es lastimoso lo que voy a decir, o sea, es triste lo que voy a decir, pero en Puerto Rico hay mucha corrupción en el gobierno. Y nosotros estamos pasando por mucha corrupción en diferentes municipios. Hoy mismo hay el arresto de dos alcaldes y esto sigue. El FBI está metido por la corrupción que hay y están manejando los fondos indebidamente. Y es necesario que esos fondos se manejen adecuadamente para que puedan llegar y darle servicio para lo que el gobierno americano ha propuesto ese dinero.
Hola, aquí. Sabemos que en Puerto Rico se le hizo difícil porque las escuelas se destruyeron. Los estudiantes estuvieron en casa como 2 años después de la pandemia y sabemos que se le ha hecho difícil no solamente a Puerto Rico, sino al gobierno poder arreglar las escuelas. ¿Y cómo se mantenieron?
Bueno, la situación después del huracán María, que azotó Puerto Rico, hizo una destrucción en Puerto Rico tremenda, pues continuamos después de la recuperación, que nos recuperamos bastante, pues comenzaron las clases, pero no presencial, virtual, desde los hogares. Las personas, pues, la nueva tecnología del internet y demás, pues fue lo que se estaba utilizando en aquel entonces. Luego viene la pandemia, pues, continúa nuevamente las clases virtuales, no presenciales, y actualmente hay una recuperación del sistema educativo presencial, pero ante el aumento que estamos teniendo nuevamente del COVID-19, el gobierno de Puerto Rico está recomendando que en algunos lugares que hay esta incidencia del COVID que está aumentando en algunos planteles, se ha notificado, se ha dado una noticia de que hay un aumento de contagio en algunos planteles de Puerto Rico, pues está tomando las medidas para volver otra vez en algunos lugares las clases no presenciales, o sea, virtuales, no virtuales. Entonces, hacerlo virtualmente es lo que quiero decir. Y yo creo que como comunicador que yo soy y como estudiante que fui, no hay nada mejor que estar en una escuela.
Exacto.
Estar en una escuela. Ahí tú aprendes, ahí tú te corrigen si estás equivocado, ¿no? No que virtualmente en una computadora pues te lo dice todo. Y quiero decirle al público que mientras usted estaba escuchando la música, pues hemos tenido la visita aquí en los estudios de Casa Pueblo, de Radio Casa Pueblo, de dos amigos que vienen directamente de los Estados Unidos, padre e hijo. Son ellos Ramón y Jonathan, ¿verdad?
Así es.
¿Ah?
Así es, sí.
Y así mismo es, ¿verdad? Pues vamos a que yo les dé un saludo. Primero Jonathan, que es el más jovencito, el nene, que viene por aquí, un saludo. Ellos están aquí visitando a Casa Pueblo y pues me han hecho prácticamente una entrevista improvisada, pero vamos a que ellos pues por lo menos saluden al público. Jonathan.
Saludos a todos, muchas gracias por el apoyo con todos.
Y entonces viene papá por aquí, ¿qué dice?
Ramón, bueno,
Ramón.
buenos días a todos y gracias a esta emisora y a nuestro hermano aquí. Es un placer de poder entrar por las puertas de la Junta aquí y pasar un día hermoso y ver lo que Puerto Rico ofrece. Y de verdad que estamos aquí orgullosos de ser puertorriqueños, aunque sea New Yorker, como lo decimos nosotros, pero estamos aquí, ¿verdad? Experimentando lo que es la bella isla de Puerto Rico y con su locutor acá. Bueno.
Qué bueno, espero que disfruten su estadía aquí en Adjuntas y gracias por visitar a Casa Pueblo y a Radio Casa Pueblo.
Un placer.
Un placer, gracias.
Un placer. Vayan bien.
Okay.
So one thing that we have to keep in mind about Puerto Rico is that not all forms of infrastructure are traditional. So what you'll see over here behind me is a street that's not too dissimilar from streets that you would see in the States. What you will see is that there are older aspects of infrastructure into more traditional forms of housing that have streets that are a little bit more interconnected. So you'll see over here are very narrow streets because this infrastructure is older than the town of Arecibo itself. I mean, this was established way before that. So you kind of see like these really small, narrow homes and informal kind of like pathways to getting to these homes. Okay, so I just finished coming out of the University of Puerto Rico in Arecibo. I had a really great experience speaking with a few professors and also a nurse with her PhD that was kind of speaking a little bit about the failures and successes of the medical infrastructure over here and how post Hurricane Maria, the psychological toll that was taken on kids, it's still an ongoing problem. The general consensus here is that the relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico really isn't that even go a step further. I mean, the general consensus is that most people believe that the relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico is terrible. And it's something that really does need to change. I'm not entirely sure if I'll see that in my lifetime. I'll be right there in a second. So I'm back in New York, and I've had about a good 2 weeks to kind of marinate a little bit on my experience in Puerto Rico and everything that kind of just happened there. And coming back, I can honestly say that it was just an eye-opening experience, getting to just speak to different people, different professors, different activists that are really committed to the mission of advancing Puerto Rico. Into this project thinking that I was just going to speak basically about education in Puerto Rico, and what I realized quickly was that the problems that are plaguing the island go so much deeper than just education, right? And one of the things that I kind of realized is that sometimes we oftentimes take for granted the kind of environment that we're in. Here in New York, we really don't have to worry about much, especially in Manhattan, right? You can go to the bodega and there's always going to be food in the shelves. You're never going to worry about losing power in the middle of the night. And the reality for Puerto Rico is that that's not really the case. The thing is that at any point in time, there could be a hurricane or an earthquake that strikes and that knocks out the power grid as it exists right now in Puerto Rico. And so having the advantage of having solar panels and being energy independent goes a long way to ensuring that schools can remain open, that hospitals can remain open, and that people can communicate when there are problems that are happening in remote parts of the island. I want to say before I end this vlog is I had a lot of help from different professors. Centro for Puerto Rican Studies over at Hunter were a fantastic resource. Also the University of Puerto Rico, Arecibo. I had plenty of professors that really helped out. Shout out to Gabriel. And I just really want to shout out Casa Pueblo as well. They are amazing. The work that they do there is amazing. And I had a lot of interviews that I did that unfortunately for this particular school project, I can't put. It would make this project way too long. But what I'm hoping to do is that maybe in the near future, I can piece together some of these interviews and really create something that all of you guys would like. So how Puerto Rico adapts to these changes is going to tell us where they're going to be. And unfortunately, while there are many advocates that are working, doing the groundwork, there's not much support. And I'm gonna keep following this and seeing where it goes. But you guys let me know, like, what do you think? You know, do you think that the colonial dynamic between the US and Puerto Rico is something that's fair? Is it democratic? Is it not democratic? Do you think that the infrastructure in Puerto Rico is good, bad, relative to what, right? Because if you compare infrastructure in Puerto Rico to, let's say, Jamaica or the Dominican Republic, it's a million times better, right? But again, those countries, they're not US colonies, right? So to what standards do we hold Puerto Rico in terms of infrastructure, education, health, government? are we holding it to American standards, or are we holding it to Caribbean standards or standards of Latin America? Like, I'm curious to know. What do you guys think?